Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully, you got to explore some of our lounge. Um, I got to see some people at the math and stats table. There were some good conversations going on at the first time textbook author table. I really enjoyed that one, even though I just snooped and listened to y'all. I didn't see anyone at the nursing table, but I hope that you're making some connections with other people and otherwise engaging with other people. Let me see how many people we have here right now. Oh, wow. A lot of people in this session here joining us in our LibreFest virtual conference. And this session is also being streamed to YouTube. So if you're joining us on YouTube, there should be someone that can answer some of your comments there. Otherwise, there should be a link to this session so you can register if you'd like to join us for the rest of the week. So today, we are going to do a half an hour overview of the LibreVerse to kind of give you an idea of all the different tools that are capable to be used to help you change your pedagogy, make your class more interactive, engage your students, or to simply take something that was expensive for your students and make it free, but not make any major changes to it. So to do that, we're going to walk through this, and then immediately following this, Delmar Larson is going to give us a little talk on how a lot of the tools that I'm talking about can interact with each other and can be embedded in each other, and really how interoperable everything in the LibreVerse really is. The power of LibreText beyond most OER platforms is not that we have good quality materials. A lot of OER platforms have good quality materials, but what we have is a full ecosystem of OER platforms that all work together in a seamless way. And first, we need to know what those tools are first. So without any more ado, we're going to start off by talking about the platforms that we have. I ended the last session talking about the Launchpad, which is accessible by hitting that rocket ship in the corner of any of our pages. It has our LibreVerse platforms across the top and our textbooks or textbook libraries across the bottom. If you go and take a look at those libraries, there are 3 special libraries, and then those ones are our language libraries. So the Espanol library is not where you go to teach Spanish. That is a library that is all in Spanish for Spanish instruction. So if you want to teach chemistry at a Spanish-speaking school, then your chemistry book will be in the Espanol library. Same thing for Ukrainian and same thing for the global libraries. So those are for translated texts, not for the teaching an English student how to learn those languages. All of our second language acquisition books are located in the humanities libraries, actually. So in the humanities library, there is English as a second language, as well as all of our like Spanish 101, Spanish 102, or 203 books. Inside the Espanol library, you'll see there is a Química book, a library, a Salud library, which are where we host translations of our other libraries. I will give a point that we do really highly encourage, if you're interested in funding this effort to make translations into other languages, we are generally supported by federal grants and state grants, and those are not avenues for us to get funding for translations to other global languages. So we encourage people to donate for that purpose, and we have a little QR code there for donations there. If you're in one of the other 13 libraries that are not our language libraries, then those libraries are going to be divided into 3 sections. There's going to be a campus bookshelf, a bookshelf, and learning objects. All of our libraries will have this. What will be in the learning objects is going to vary depending on the library that you're looking at. And then the publishing aspect of LibreText is basically just the act of taking a hidden book that's in what we call a workbench that you can't see unless you're logged in as an instructor, and then taking what you've made there and we put it into one of the other areas. So if you're going to make a remix of a book that is just the things that your students are going to use for your class and it's really only useful for your class, then we're going to take that and we're going to put it into the campus bookshelf. And your campus will get its own bookshelf there. If you're making a book that's your authored book that would be really useful for a broad audience, anyone who's teaching Communications 101 could probably take this book and use it in their class. then that book will get published to the bookshelf area because it's a commonly used book by anybody who might want to look for anything. If you're making some other object, let's say a lab manual, a case study, some sort of activity that could be used with a lot of different books, or maybe you're making some interactive module, that will be something that will get published to the learning objects. So publishing in LibreText is not starting with knowing where it's going to end up and then fleshing it out. You build in the workbench, and then we move it based on the audience that it's going to serve the best. Everything is remixable. Everything can be used anywhere. But this also allows us to really have a uniform way for approaching publishing. One other thing I want to point out, nothing about how your books operate changes depending on where it's located. If you can edit something in the workbench, you can edit it in the bookshelf. So the big goal here is just to make things as easy and live as possible. So if you need to update something in your class for next week, you can just go into your book and edit it. Publishing in LibreText does not mean creating a static copy of it. We are not of that type of publisher mindset there. We do have version histories, revision histories, so you can see if anything has changed. And when you go to the remixer talk later today, we'll talk about how to do those sorts of things. As I mentioned, that little bitty rocket ship is in the corner of all of these pages, and there is a login. This bar will be gray and say sign in if you're not signed in. If you log in and it says your name in blue, then that means you're unverified, and you should have probably gone to that instructor verification session that was just finishing up. Otherwise, send a message to one of our team or stop by the support booth whenever there are people there, and they can help you out. It should be a black bar if you are a verified instructor account. That gives you access to publish things and to edit things that you make. So back to that Launchpad, clicking on that rocket ship, we can see all the different tools that are there. And we're going to start off by looking at the publishing tool that we have, which is our Commons and Conductor. This is the part where verified instructors have access to the Conductor, which is our back end, or back of the house, I like to call it. And our Commons is the front of the house. So if you want to find books in any of the 16 libraries, then that would be going to the Commons. If you want to make a book that's going to get published into any of the 16 libraries, you go to the Conductor, which is our project management system. And you should have that little verified instructor thing there. So think of this as two sides of the same coin. One is the back of house where the food is prepared. One is the front of the house where we serve it to people. Commons does not require any logging in whatsoever, and Conductor does require being logged in order for you to be able to use that. Once you go to the the Commons, you get this full catalog, and I'm just going to go ahead and walk through it. All right. Give this a second. Do we have a lot of people accessing it? There we go. So this is the Launchpad. If you click on that rocket ship from any of our other pages, then you'll end up here. You'll get to access any of those libraries there. And now I'm going to specifically go into looking at, I'm going to make this a little bigger. I had my resolution very small. I'll actually make it even bigger. So I'm going to go into the Commons here and take a look at different tools that we have and different ways to find things in the LibreText, LibreVerse. So you can go to the library, and you can search within which library you want. You'll notice that we do have 3,600 books now. So my slide from earlier today is already out of date. And you can search by subject or location. So location would be that central bookshelf, which means books for anyone, anywhere, or campus bookshelves, books that I've made pretty specific for my class at my school. So oftentimes you'll want to look just at the campus bookshelves, just at the central bookshelves, which give you the books that are meant to be used broadly by anybody. When you're looking at any of these books, you can click on it and get a view of all the table of contents, which library it's in, what the authors are, where they're located. You can read the book online, download PDFs, buy print copies of it, download those pages as a zip file of all the different chapters, and you can download an LMS file, which allows you to embed your book straight into your Canvas, your Blackboard, however you want to use this book, and then also get access to some of the metadata. If there were some associated assets for this book. So for instance, PowerPoint or quizzes, we have the ability to have assets that are both instructor assets only. So for instance, answer keys, and then you could have public assets that anybody could access, that your students could access as well. Inside of the catalog, we also have campus commons. So if you're a member of our LibreNet consortium, for instance, the Carly group I've mentioned earlier today, this is where you can find all of the books and resources that are either used or authored by people in that consortium group. And Carly even shows all of their campuses, and then you can figure out who's published what. So this is a benefit of the LibreNet consortium. And I have all this backup just in case issues happen, but I like to do it live if I can. So here, back to the Launchpad. Now let's talk about some of these services or platforms or other tools that we have that are not libraries. And those are the Academy Online, which is online asynchronous courses for professional development. We have our Adapt homework system, Connections Forum, I mentioned earlier today. The Forge, which is for writing analytics and assessment of long form assignments. Jupyter, which is for data science and computer science coding notebooks. If you're familiar with what Jupyter is, you probably don't need it explained. And then we have our store, which is for purchasing print books, access codes for any of our homework systems, or the things that cost some money for just making sure things are up and running. Our H5P authoring and database library, which is called our studio. And we have our support center where you can go to get support tickets, find frequently asked questions, and other useful information. To get into the three that I highlighted there, the assessment, the first one I mentioned is Adapt. You'll notice I mentioned this earlier today too. We have Adapt 1, 2, and 3 sessions this week for the different levels of Adapt. It is a very complicated, large juggernaut, really, of a system, which encompasses a lot of really great open source tools underneath one library and interface. So if you're familiar with WebWork, Adapt is also WebWork. If you're familiar with MyOpenMath, which is based on iMathAS, we have our own iMathAS server as well. If you're familiar with H5P, Adapt can also run H5P assessments. So there are over 300,000 questions that are currently in our Adapt database from many different technologies, along with technologies that we have built ourselves here at LibreText. The one that's probably the most important is learning trees. This is where the word Adapt came from, where you can take different learning assignments and different questions from all over a database and build adaptive learning trees where people can focus on the metacognition, asking students to reflect on their answers and then choose different remediations that they can do in order to practice more problems and earn more attempts to continue on in that assignment. We have some sessions that will talk a little bit about learning trees. Adapt is also our grade book for all of our assessment tools. So anything that can be graded in Adapt in LibreVerse funnels all the questions back to assignments in Adapt, and Adapt will link to your campus. So if you have Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle, all of those can be linked straight into Adapt, so students don't need to worry about a second sign-on. There's nothing that they need to worry about with another username, or for instance, if you have issues with people using other email addresses and trying to bring that back, it's a big issue. Since this has been all grant funded, it is accessible by initial design. And we've got a lot of really great tools trying to beat out for-profit publisher models, including audio recordings, molecular structures. So if you want to draw molecules or grade drawings of structures, we have that. If you're familiar with MolView, we work with them to build a really robust molecular structure drawing tool. Obviously, we started as being chemists. And that long-form writing tool, which is the Forge, also is embedded into Adapt as well. So all of these sorts of things are taught throughout this week. Adapt 1, 2 today will be led by Delmar, and he'll walk you through all the things you need to get started with this. And then we'll have some other sessions on the Forge and discuss it. And then we'll have a lot of sessions later this week for open office hours to ask questions on what needs to get done. We do allow for homework questions to be aligned to frameworks and for customization of any questions that are in our database along the way. Here's an example of a learning tree, just to give you an idea. You ask a question, If they get it wrong, they have to come up with they have to read through a strategy of how they could have gotten it right, and then choose which path they're going to use in order to get a second try to do that question over again. Here's a picture of our Discuss It, which is our asynchronous. If you've heard of VoiceThread, it's very similar to that, where students can do audio, text, or video threaded discussions, and you can have them graded on whether they start threads, respond to threads, or you can have it open-ended where you have to go and read them and watch them. Our Jupyter Notebooks, we've got a full Jupyter Notebook platform. We also allow embedding into the textbook. We're going to have some examples of this. If you're interested in coding or in how you can just do a little bit of basic coding in your classes to have students engage with data, I encourage you to attend the Jupyter session tomorrow. Carl will be joining us, and he is created some really amazing things that can be done using Jupyter. I just have one example here of, let's have students write a histogram. You can modify whatever breaks you want in that histogram, and it will pop up on the screen as a visual. We do have a full H5P database as well as an authoring platform. You can also import your own H5P into our database and then use them standalone, embedded in a textbook, however you want to use them, but that's all available for you. And we'll have some examples for that in the next session. And then I wanted to just point out at the very, very end, we have a bunch of tools that have already been built by really devoted faculty across the country to have embedded things into our textbooks, such as CalcPlot 3D and PhET simulations and structure viewers. All of these things are available, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next session. So I didn't want to go into too much detail, but I want to give a high-level overview of all the different tools that we have and give you a chance to ask some questions about that later. Just to give you an idea of what the Forge is and a plug to go and listen to Sarah Harmon's talk tomorrow about the Forge. This is a long-form writing assignment tool, which allows you to change your pedagogy from thinking about the final product to focusing on the process of writing, for instance. So, for instance, here you have students who started off with at time 0 with 0 words, and they wrote, and these green bubbles mean they copied and pasted, copied and pasted, copied and pasted. Then they wrote some more, they deleted a chunk, they copied and pasted, copied and pasted, copied and pasted. And these little speckles along the edge, which you may not even be able to see because it's so small, are where they went back to earlier in the essay and made some edits. Whereas this student here looks like they wrote a bunch, rewrote, wrote, rewrote, wrote, did some editing along the way, possibly got a draft return from their instructor at this point, went back and then used those edits from their faculty member to revise their whole essay before finishing it and writing the conclusion twice. So that allows you to interact with your students in a way that you can focus on, I taught you how to write this in a certain way and to revise things in a certain way. Let's see if you're interacting and engaging in the way that I planned on it. For instance, I'm a chemistry professor. In chemistry, I frequently tell my students that you should not write your introduction until after you write your data analysis section. So I would expect students to go back to the beginning and rewrite a whole bunch of that beginning because they're supposed to write their introduction later. The project management system, there's going to be a lot about project management here this week for anybody who is a librarian or a coordinator or anyone who is looking at the campus as a whole and their stakeholders. The project management tools in Conductor are really excellent for maintaining who has access to the book as an editor, who has access to the book in read-only access before it's published, who is going to be on the team doing different tasks, reviewing tasks. This is where you access the remixer. This is where you access any peer reviews that people have submitted about your books. This is where you access some of your accessibility checklists. This is also where you access all those AI co-author things I mentioned earlier today. And a lot of tools are going to be moving into here. So even if you've used LibreText in the past couple of years, some of the tools that used to be on the libraries, we're trying to move more and more into the Conductor to centralize what I would call the editorial process of a book as opposed to just the writing of the content process. And as a reminder, this is the back of the house when you write a book, is our Conductor. Along the way, we have a bunch of support. So that other button that was on that launch pad is our support. That'll take you to our support center, which has the LibreText Insight. Search for answers to questions there in some databases. We also have this blue question mark in the bottom right-hand corner of every page. that is where you can submit support tickets or harvesting requests to bring other OER materials into LibreText. And then we also have a lot of recorded videos. For instance, this one will be on our LibreText YouTube channel here. I mentioned earlier, hopefully you already went out and then made a little note on your connections. That's our faculty discussion forum, and you can go there and chat with other people there. Last, we do have free office hours every Tuesday and Thursday for 9 a.m. Pacific or noon Eastern, and that is at zoom.libretext.org. Pop in there and ask any questions you have along the way, and I will usually be the one there to help you out if you need anything. As a quick note on the connections, in case you're worried, only verified instructors can post things, so you're not going to get posts from other students or things like that. You can make things private or anonymous if you're worried about someone finding it, because it is a public forum. And there are support tags. So if you can tag any question, you can you can post and adapt and also mark it support, and then we'll be able to notify that pretty quickly and take a look at it. And I highly recommend you put up anything that's really helped you along the way in that share the love area of this here, of along the way with LibreText. Oh, I mentioned that. So with that, I am concluding this little overview of the whole entire LibreVerse. We're going to dive into some of the more interactivity and the really cool engagement things we have in LibreText in the next session. And you guys won't be hearing my voice for the first time today. So you'll get a break from this and you'll get to move on from there into our training sessions for the afternoon. Delmar will take over at the next session. That one will also be on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can watch that one. The other thing I wanted to mention, remember, if you're on the East Coast and it gets to be about 5 o'clock and you're tired of this, remember anything past the next session, which is Adapt 1, 2, 3, and the publishing sessions, will be repeated tomorrow morning. So if you want to start tomorrow morning off with those sessions, you may do so. Otherwise, we'll see you this afternoon. Or if you're on the Pacific Coast, you just really like to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, then we can see you tomorrow morning as well. So with that, I'm going to jump over to the question and answers really quick. Answered. So what is the difference between LibreText and OpenStax? This is a good question. So because every once in a while you go to LibreText, you might find an OpenStax book. We're both OER platforms. We know each other. We hang out when we visit each other at different conferences. What we are is two different OER platforms that have different modes of operation. So OpenStax is a OER that operates very much with a traditional publisher mindset, which is let's get a group of authors together, have them write a book, and then have some people review that book. And then we go out there and say, hey, everybody, we've written a book. You should adopt our book. It's got stuff, which is exactly how a publisher model does it. They're good quality books. We don't have any problem with that. LibreText operates on a faculty knows best type of a mindset. We're by faculty for faculty, which means we allow faculty to take any materials they want, put them in any order that they want, and write their own materials and intermingle and remix everything however they would like. So the book that most people use out of LibreText is one that really is only useful for their class. Any LibreText, any book that you want to that's licensed as OER, so Creative Commons licenses from Pressbooks or from OpenStax or from other platforms, if it has a license that is OER, then we can bring those books into our library, just like any library can have a copy of somebody else's book. And once it's in our library, then you can do the remixing and modifying and customization that you might want. So if you love OpenStax books, but you really just don't want to have chapters 16 through 24, because that's not even this semester, that's next semester, then you can make a version of OpenStax that's just chapter 1 through 15. That's a way that you can do that. So the goal here is really they're both very good, very useful, different starting points and different curation mechanisms. All of the other questions in the QA look like they have been answered. So with that, I am going to say goodbye because the next session starts in about 3 minutes. For the verification process, Kim, you should just need to have shoot Jennifer a message in the DMs, and she can help you out. Jennifer Rogers, I should say. All right, I'll see you guys all at the next session.